Oh my goodness, are we going to have some fun on the podcast today? We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects and actually one of my least favorite subjects at the same time. We're going to talk about acceptance. We're going to talk about surrender. We're going to talk about allowing things to be as they are, especially in this time of political vitriol, of social unrest, of real troubles for people. We just read that 40 million people are going to be evicted next month from where they live. It's terrifying and it's heartbreaking, and there's a lot going on. But I want to talk about how, kind of ways that I deal with the world. How do I walk through the world so that I'm not absolutely paralyzed by some of the things that I read, some of the things that I see, and some of the things that I experience firsthand? I was reading a book by Adyashanti. Adyashanti is a non-dual teacher. Maybe you would think more Buddhist, more basically just a spiritual teacher. He's a spiritual teacher because he's been on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, so he must be a spiritual teacher. But actually, he's really pretty incredible. And what I was reading in the morning was about enlightenment, and I'm always kind of exploring the nature of reality. Enlightenment. What does it mean to be free of this human existence, to see past the veil of reality? And now that's a bit much for the Mastering Midlife podcast. That's a bit much to even be talking about. But he did say some things that were just so practical in how I live that makes living simpler, less friction. And it has to do with acceptance. And what he said was, in order to become enlightened, you need to let go of arguments. And it's really kind of easy to be enlightened, to sit on a cushion and to let go of your beliefs, let go of your thoughts, let go of everything you know about the world, and really settle into your center. And you can look at a tree, you can be with a dog, and you can feel that peace. You can feel that emptiness for just a moment. It's accessible to most people, to really just feel surrendered for a second or two, for a moment, maybe for 5 minutes. But to stay enlightened, he says, you need to end arguments for good. You need to end arguments for good. And then he goes on to say, you need to stop arguing with yourself. And how often do we just argue with ourselves and torture ourselves? You need to stop arguing with the world, the way the world is. You need to stop arguing with the way the world is, and you need to stop arguing with God. Blasphemy for Jews, because one of the great things about Judaism is that you get to argue with God all the time. But the end of arguments, uh, Byron Katie says, when you argue with reality, you only lose 100% of the time. When you argue with reality, you only lose 100% of the time. In AA, they say, acceptance is the key to my serenity. Acceptance is the key to my serenity. Byron Katie, I think it's either Byron Katie or Eckhart Tolle has also said things like, how do you know something should be happening? Because it is. If it happened, it should have happened. How do you know? Because it happened. Now, I can hear the arguments already. If I accept these things, if I stop arguing with these things, if I stop arguing with young men of color being killed by the police, or if I argue with the COVID numbers, or if I argue with anything political, if I just put my hands down and put my hands up and just say I accept it all, then what am I going to do about any of that? And that's not what we're talking about here at all. We're not talking about no action. We're not talking about having feelings and passions and really wanting to do something. What we're talking about is arguing with reality. And I talk about this all the time with my clients in their businesses. When something happens, if we spend our time ruminating over, this shouldn't have happened, this is unfair, this is just not right, life, people who are successful understand that life is not fair, and then they deal with what happens and go and move forward. So acceptance means that there is social unrest. Acceptance means that we are at each other's throats over political vitriol, and one side knows the truth, the other side knows the truth even better. With the Black Lives Matter and police, it is so hard to find ground until you surrender, until I sit down on my pillow and I realize that yes, being a police officer and going out into the world is so dangerous. It's so stressful. You deal with people at their worst. Just giving someone a ticket, they're pissy and they're annoying. It must be so hard being a police officer. Like I can actually, if I was coaching a police officer, I would cry with what they have to deal with and what happens to their marriages and their children's fears and everything that happens in their lives and what they deal with every day. They deal with life and death situations all the time. And then they have to go home and be regular people. Then I can also empathize with all my Black friends who I talk to, where they actually do talk to their sons about how they're supposed to act when they're confronted by police. I have heard too many stories of Ivy League educated, well-dressed, well-spoken Black men and women, by the way, who have had violent interactions with police, and all while they were complying. All of that can be true, but you can't hold all of that until you surrender, until you sit and you empty yourself so that you can hear that there's just so much complication and so much gray in the whole thing. And then to not argue with that, for me, that's my hard part, is how can I get everybody to see that we all have a point of view, that we all have something to be heard? And that's where I have to let go of my arguments. So back to Adyashanti, as he says, when you let go of anything that gets in between you and loving, that's enlightenment. Anything that gets between you and loving and caring and being open-hearted, that's a form of enlightenment. So the end of arguments for me, I keep this on my whiteboard. I need to stop arguing with myself. I need to stop arguing with the world, and I need to stop arguing with God so that I can be present, so that I can feel the connection between all things. And I can actually move through the world, move through problems, move through challenges. Things are going to happen. Washing machines are going to break. Business deals are going to fall through. Credit is going to be taken away. All kinds of things that are going to do something with our lives. Uh, Accepting it, saying, okay, this happened. Now what? This is my hand. This is how I play, is such a frictionless way of going through life. And again, it's an ideal. You can't do it all the time, but the more you can let go, the more you can, just stop arguing with the way things should be, to how they are, and then how you would like to influence them. So if you want to go protest, you can go protest. If you want to go take food to the people who are food insecure, you go do that. You don't say this shouldn't be happening, because it is happening. You say, okay, this is happening. This is what we need to do. Again, for me, it's a frictionless existence, letting go of the resistance to the way the world is, the way I think things should be, and just dealing with things how they are, and then responding in the best possible way so that I can be helpful. Hopefully this was a useful conversation. It's something that I spend tons and tons of time journaling on and sitting with. My job really is to love freely, and to take a Zamboni, which those of you who don't know, a Zamboni is the thing that smooths the ice in between play, for ice hockey games, is take a Zamboni to anything that keeps me from loving. So I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Please share this podcast if it's useful, and really, really, really take care of yourselves. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.